Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. We're going to have a few people joining over the next few minutes, so if you see more people pop up on the screen, try not to get too distracted. I just want to thank all of you for being here. My name is Professor Rhode Cohen-Shore, or Dr. Cohen. I've been teaching at Glendale Community College since 2013. I'm joined here by esteemed faculty, staff, and students, including prospective students and interested students who would like to hear more about our unique partnership with the Pulitzer Center Consortium. So we are so glad to be a campus that is partaking with the Pulitzer Center. We are off the heels of an exciting trip to Washington, D.C., where our first fellow, Miss Jacqueline Kamai, had an opportunity to present her findings on social media and how women perceive themselves. She will be popping in a little bit later to share some of her findings and her experiences with you. The Pulitzer Center Consortium is an opportunity to let students at Glendale Community College be mentored by individuals outside of the campus. Faculty, of course, are very hands-on, and we try to serve the students' unique needs. My co-founder, Professor Michelle Stonis, and I really steadfastly believe that this is an amazing opportunity to community college students who are able to and do perform at incredible levels. And we want to honor that and help them as they meet their transfer goals, as you meet those transfer goals. We have with us today Libby Moeller from the Pulitzer Center Consortium. And I want to turn it over to you so you can talk more about these students, many of whom will be submitting a Pulitzer Center proposal as a final assignment for their classes, and some of whom are thinking about doing it or thinking about enrolling in future classes. So without further ado, Libby.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cohen, and thank you all for being here. As Dr. Cohen said, my name is Libby Moeller, and I work at the Pulitzer Center on Crisis Reporting. We're based in Washington, D.C. I specifically am based in Connecticut, and that's where I'm Zooming to you from today. So it's great to be with you all virtually. And I'm really excited to be here too, to share more about what this Pulitzer Center Reporting Fellowship is. As Dr. Cohen said, we just had our huge Washington weekend event a few weekends ago. Professor Stonis, who's also on this call, was able to be there, which was fantastic to meet her. So with my time today, I'm just going to have some slides for you. I'm going to share a little bit about what the fellowship is, what students gain from the fellowship, and some requirements that we have for you guys to apply. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and get my screen shared. I also wanted to mention, if you have any questions for me, there will be time for that at the end. I probably won't be able to see your questions in the chat while I'm sharing my screen, but I promise I will get to them at the end of the slideshow. And also, Jacqueline, who is our 2022 fellow, is going to be hopping in on the Zoom in a little bit, and she'll get to share more about her project after I kind of give you this overview. So I will go ahead and get started here. So I always like to start off these presentations with this first important question, which is, what is the Pulitzer Center? I've already mentioned that we're an organization based in DC, and now on the screen, you're seeing our mission statement. And that mission revolves around raising awareness of what we call underreported global issues. The way that we do that is through directly supporting quality journalism across pretty much any media platform you can think of. So that means text, stories, documentaries, podcasts, interactive web pages, any type of journalism. We then bring that journalism to the public and to our education partners, Glendale being one of them, through our outreach programs and our campus consortium network. Another important question is, what is the Pulitzer Center Reporting Fellowship? What is this opportunity? And this is an opportunity for a student to tell an underreported story and gain really, really valuable journalism and writing experience. If you receive the fellowship, you will win a stipend of $3,000 to cover all of your reporting costs, research, and travel costs. You'll also join our Pulitzer Center network that includes all of the journalists who we've supported, all of the education partners who we work with, and all of the alums of this program. We've been facilitating the Reporting Fellowship for more than 10 years now, and we've developed a really robust network of alums, both within the United States and abroad. And those people are still in journalism. Some of them are writers and editors, or they're not involved with journalism at all. So it really is an opportunity that you can apply to your future career, whether you want to stay in journalism or not. You also have the chance to broaden the impact and the reach of your reporting through outreach opportunities that we help facilitate at the Pulitzer Center. So that might look like doing a virtual visit with a K through 12 classroom or a university classroom. So now on screen, you're seeing our most recent cohort of reporting fellows. In 2022, we have 54 total fellows, and all of these students come from our 40 campus consortium network partners. That network includes community colleges, state universities, HBCUs, journalism schools, schools of public health, liberal arts colleges, etc. Lots of variety within our network of partners. And now on screen, you're seeing a map of where all of our 2022 reporting fellows ended up traveling. This year was especially an exciting cohort because we were able to send a lot of people around the world, which we weren't really able to do as much in 2020 and 2021 during kind of peak parts of the COVID-19 pandemic. So as you can see, we're sending fellows to most continents in the world, and there's a really, really big variety of places you can go with this fellowship money. I also wanted to touch a little bit on the reporting fellow community, this network of people and alums that you will be joining if you win the fellowship. I would say the most exciting part of that community is what we call Washington Weekend, which has been mentioned a couple of times now. Washington Weekend is, I think, a really amazing networking and just overall fun opportunity for our reporting fellows. We get to bring all of you together in DC at our Pulitzer Center headquarters, and it's a weekend full of presentations, of exploring DC, getting to meet one another, just having fun social activities, and really getting to embrace that fellowship community and interact with people who have gone through the same experience as you. They've traveled, they've reported a story, and this year it was just really, really fun, really amazing, especially because for the past couple of years, we weren't able to have that event in person. Other photos on screen are just examples of recent alum reunions we've had in the DC area. We also like to host events featuring our reporting fellow work whenever possible. So over here is a screenshot from a film festival that we hosted this summer virtually, featuring some of the films from our reporting fellows. Up here is just an alum reunion that we held virtually, and we also love to involve reporting fellows in visits to our campus partner schools whenever possible. Now to touch just a little bit more on community, I wanted to show you this highlights video We're actually still wrapping up our highlights video from our most recent Washington weekend. It should be out any day now, so unfortunately I can't show you that, but I do have this video from our most recent virtual Washington weekend, which took place in October of 2021. So this video kind of touches on what students can gain from the fellowship, the types of stories they reported, etc.
When I was in middle school, I had a writing teacher, and she always told us the best way to write a story is to find the watermelon seed and blow it up into the watermelon.
There are so many stories out there, and even just a little detail, a beautiful story can unravel.
Aim high, be resourceful, and also give yourself grace.
Everyone you meet can help elevate your story in some way, even if you're expecting it or not.
Many of the documentaries that I've worked on, have never been the story that I started out with, and it becomes the story that it actually should be.
What was originally going to be a sad story about kidnappings and disappearance to one, I think, about hope and the humanity of everyone involved.
If I didn't write these stories, these voices would never be heard. We all have created something that will only make the world a better place.
Resonating with people and understanding their stories is obviously the secret to good journalism.
And that's why, you write these stories and you tell these stories because you care and because you want others to care about it as well.
And it actually gives me hope for journalism because we know that it's under attack in many quarters. And it makes me happy to see that there are people who are willing to go out and will tell the stories that need to be told.
If you're doing work that is informing the communities that you're reporting in, while also raising those issues to a larger audience, that's the best journalism you can be doing.
It reminded me just how healing journalism can be just as a human, and to just answer questions you might just have, as a reader, as, a person.
And the reason I was inspired to go into journalism was to try to provide some flesh to those stick figure portrayals of people like me, like my mom.
The story that we decided to tell is about pride and sense of place.
And we've been told while we were reporting there that we have been the first filmmakers to return week after week to the organization to really figure out what the story is and how people feel about their neighborhood.
Do not limit your aspirations to what you think is possible for people of the same background as you, because you can always shatter ceilings.
We often get to know about countries outside the U.S. only in the context of catastrophe. We do exist between catastrophe.
Everybody is just really into what they're doing, and it's a really good thing to see, and just be surrounded by journalists who really, really, really care about the things that they're reporting on.
And if you can maintain those relationships over the course of your career, over the course of your work, those will echo and resonate and create new opportunities.
Keep in touch with each other, stay connected. This is just the beginning.
Thank you.
When I was in middle.
All right, so now that I've shared a little bit of the big picture of the fellowship, I'm going to delve now into some specifics about the application and about what the process looks like. So as Dr. Cohen said, if you are enrolled in our campus consortium classes, this will end up being kind of your final assignment. So as part of that, what you're going to do is you're going to write a project proposal description for us. This is where you're going to let us know, what is your story? Why do you want to tell this story? Why should you be the person to tell this story? You'll also include a budget, how you intend to spend that $3,000, some writing samples, references, and your resume. Once all of those applications have been received, Pulitzer Center will work along with Glendale to select that final reporting fellow. That person then will sign their grant contract, fill out their pre-reporting paperwork, all those not super fun tasks, but super essential in making sure we have things like travel insurance purchased for you and making sure we can pay your grant stipend in a timely manner. All of our reporting fellows have the support of Pulitzer Center staff throughout their projects, and we're also going to pair you with a grantee advisor. So this is going to be someone, a journalist who has worked with the Pulitzer Center before, and this will be someone who's familiar either with the topic that you'd like to report on or the area of the country or the world where you like to travel with your fellowship money. In terms of the work that you can produce with the fellowship, there are a couple of requirements, but there's also a lot of flexibility within that. So all of our fellows are going to produce a main central story. But this story can be an article, a written piece, it can be a video, a short documentary, a podcast, etc. You'll also need some element of multimedia in your project. So that can look like a lot of people tend to, let's say, write an article as their main story. And then for a multimedia element, they take a bunch of photos to pair along with that article. But you can also produce a short video, maybe 1 to 2 minutes long, or have something like audio clips paired with your story. So as I've said, lots of flexibility when it comes to fulfilling those deliverables. All of our fellows will also write a field note. And I like to think of field notes as personal reflections on the reporting process. So a lot of fellows might choose to write about something like a challenge that they faced while they were in the field, something maybe that they learned about themselves during the reporting process. All of your stories are going to be guaranteed published on the Pulitzer Center website. But for anyone who's interested, you're also more than welcome to try and pitch your stories to other news outlets or get them published on other websites other than the Pulitzer Center site. This is just an example of some of the places where our fellows have also published their stories. So you can see there's a really big variety of outlets. There's some more local spots like Wisconsin Watch, Blue Ridge Public Radio, as well as more national or international focused outlets. I'm now going to pivot quickly to our Pulitzer Center website. And just show you a couple of different pages. First of all is our Glendale specific page on the website. This is where we kind of give an overview of the partnership, and all of our reporting fellows are going to be linked here. So Jacqueline's down here because Jacqueline was our first reporting fellow, and all of our future fellows will also appear on this page. I think that Jacqueline will be here soon to talk about her project after my slides, so I'm not going to delve into her project yet, but I just did also want to show you our Reporting Fellow Stories homepage on the website. This is a really good place to go to seek inspiration. If you're trying to think of, what do I want to report on with this opportunity? I would really recommend going to our website, looking around, seeing what recent students have decided to cover, and that might help kind of inspire you. Right, pivoting back here. So I mentioned that the most important part of this fellowship is going to be your proposal, your story. So now on the screen, you're just seeing a couple of things that you want to focus on when you're writing this project proposal. The first being, what topic do you want to report on? And as Dr. Cohen just said in the chat, which I forgot to add earlier in my slides, our fellowship at Glendale is focused specifically on gender-related stories. So what, under that big umbrella of gender-related stories, what topic, what angle do you want to explore that relates to that kind of main idea? You should also be thinking about what reporting has already been done on your topic, on that angle. Because as I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, at Pulitzer Center, we do have this focus on what we call underreported stories. And that just means stories that haven't been extensively covered in US or local media. You should also be thinking about what is the significance of my story? Why is my story going to matter to the Pulitzer Center audience, to my audience? You can be thinking about sources that you can identify, people that you might want to talk to. So those can be people sources, but also you can be thinking about research, data, books, non-people sources, consider those too. We'll also want to know if you've considered all of your logistics and costs. As I mentioned earlier, you will have a chance to kind of let us know how you intend to use that $3,000 if you were to win that. So some things that people usually identify is like, I think I'll spend this much money on my flight, X amount on my lodging, be thinking about costs of food, costs of travel, things like that. And then finally, be thinking about if your project is feasible or doable, and if you're going to be able to gain the access that you need. One thing kind of under this umbrella that you should be thinking about are any safety issues. At the end of the day, there are always some places that we won't be able to send reporting fellows if there's a conflict going on, or if there's anything in that region or country that would pose a threat to your safety. A couple of last questions to consider, just overall as you're thinking about your proposal and what you want to report on is, do you have any prior experience covering this topic or community? That's not a requirement, but something I like to tell prospective reporting fellows that I think a lot of my journalism professors told me is sometimes it's like a good starting point is to think about writing about what you know. So is there any topic that you have previously done research on that you might want to explore further with this fellowship? Be thinking about if your story deals with a sensitive issue, and if so, how are you prepared to cover that? Because we want to make sure that both your sources and you are kept safe, physically and mentally, emotionally throughout your project. Excuse me. And then be thinking about, is there any way that COVID-19 might affect your project? Are there any travel or other restrictions still in place? And finally, what types of deliverables will you want to produce? And by that, I mean the format of your deliverables. So do you know that you want to write a text-based story? Do you have an idea for a documentary, a more visual piece? That's something that you can let us know, through your application. Before I turn it over, or before I see if Jackie has joined us yet on the Zoom, I also wanted to just quickly show you our reporting fellowships homepage. I'll also, excuse me, share this link in the chat. But that is actually all for my slides. I'm not sure, Dr. Cohen, if Jackie is here yet, but if she's not, I can also take a couple of questions while we wait for her to join.
Jackie isn't here yet. She has a class, so she's going to be stepping out in just a few minutes and will join us at 2:30. But a couple of things, just a general announcement. If you are here for extra credit for a class that is in Journalism 103, please do sign the sheet that I just shared in the chat. Make sure to sign up so I can make sure that your instructors can give you that extra credit that you crave. I know we're in week 10 and everyone is starting to think about grades. By the way, a secret, it's more important what you learn. No one ever really cares about your grade. No one ever asked me what grade I got in some class, and we hyper focus on those things. So just a pro tip to all of the students here. And then I also just wanted to remind everyone that we are a gender-focused campus. So gender is super broad, and I can tell you from different pitches that I've read, it could be everything from how a man in Armenia is contending with PTSD after serving in war to what maternity leave looks like, to acceptance and LGBTQIA questions in specific communities that are more conservative. So I think Libby's point about reporting on what you know is very critical. And one of the common questions that I get, Libby, from students about 2 weeks before the submission date for their proposal is, can I use my language know-how to interview someone in Spanish or in Farsi or in Armenian? And the answer to that is yes, please. Journalists routinely have to do interviews in other languages. And as long as you stick to the ethics of journalism, you are golden and you are good to go for reporting in another language and then translating that into English. Though I did see that one of the most incredible things that I thought that I really enjoyed in different fellows reporting is not everything is in English. Some fellows have done their reporting in other languages. So while I won't be able to grade your pitch if it's in another language, we can talk about what that might look like and just think about what the future might look like for our Pulitzer Center program. Without further ado, Jacqueline is here. We're so glad that she was able to step away from her philosophy class. Jacqueline, we're so proud of you, and we are just thrilled that you're able to join us during the last part of our hour. Libby, whom you know, is here, and we would love to turn it over to you before we take questions from students that are maybe more specific and delve into the nitty-gritty aspects of how to come up with a proposal and how you came up with yours.
Thank you so much for that incredible introduction, Dr. Cohen. I'm so happy to be here with all of you. So I actually prepared a slide presentation that I think will help a little bit with this. And so I'll go ahead and share screen right now. Let's see. Okay. Is everyone able to see the screen so far?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. Excellent. All right. So hi, everyone. First off, thank you so much for attending today's information session. It's so wonderful that you're all interested in the partnership between GCC and the Pulitzer Center. And so for my part of this presentation, I'm going to be going over how I came up with my story proposal for social media, a double-edged sword for the feminist movement, what my reporting process was like, also what my final product was, and then very lastly, a little bit about Washington Weekend itself. And so to give a really quick one-sentence summary of my reporting project, I investigated the ways that social media is capable of both advancing and undermining the feminist movement through the experiences of organizations that work to promote feminism and that discuss women's history, as well as gender equality. And I also actually did this through looking at the experiences of experts as well. And so to begin with the inspiration behind my project, I'm sure many of you are aware of the prevalence of social media in society today. It plays a role in numerous people's lives, whether it's meeting new people, connecting with old friends, sharing ideas, or even staying informed of the news. And so it's interesting that according to a data report that was published by the Pew Research Center in 2021, they said that 40% of adults in the US actually get their news sometimes or often from social media. And so I thought this was at least some evidence of its prevalence today. I also actually pulled from my background as a psychology major for my proposal. And so for a previous research paper, I was looking into how social media impacts people's self-esteem and how that relationship has implications for pro-social behavior in general. And then this actually becomes really important in the section of my article that talks about body image issues, because that's the exact relationship that we ended up looking at. And then finally, learning about the first women's rights convention in the US, known as the Seneca Falls Convention of 1848, inspired this project as well. As I began to reflect on the success of this convention and also the movement that it sparked, I began to wonder if these women without social media were able to create such a profound impact on our society, I wonder how social media today contributes to the feminist movement in both positive and negative ways. And this is really where my story began. Also, I'm sorry if you can hear some sirens going on in the back. I'm not quite sure what's going on outside. So to be completely transparent, my plan for how I thought I would go about conducting my reporting and who I would interview actually changed multiple times. In the reporting process, I learned a lot about the need to be adaptive when things don't really go as planned. And I actually initially wanted to take a different angle for my story that would focus more on how social media relates to body image issues, eating disorders, and also depression. And so what I initially did was I contacted the National Eating Disorders Association, their ambassadors, and the UCLA Health Center to try to find someone who'd be willing to discuss how social media has played a role in some of the issues that they faced. But unfortunately, one of the challenges was, I think, how sensitive this topic inherently is. And then another challenge that I faced was social media is still something that's a fairly new aspect of our society. And so the National Eating Disorders Association couldn't actually find anyone that matched the description that I was looking for. And I followed up many times, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to find a character who would match my initial focus for this original angle for my story. And another challenge I actually had was being able to find the right experts I was looking for. I wasn't actually able to get an interview with a single expert that I had initially written on my proposal to the Pulitzer Center, which did prove to be another hurdle. And then also my original plan was to interview the famous feminist and the creator of Miss Magazine, Gloria Steinem. And unfortunately, this also didn't work out, but at least I can always say that I received an email back from her office after following up. So that was still something that was very special to me. However, I think you'll be happy to know that my journey does have a happier ending once I learned to change the angle of my story. And this actually ended up producing findings I could have never imagined and that were interesting to me because I found that they actually extended beyond just a single movement. And so to provide a basic rundown of my process, I next turned to social media to find organizations or individuals who use their platforms to advocate for women's rights and gender equality. Each of these sources use their accounts to discuss women's history, to tell the stories of women who are often forgotten, and they strive to educate the public to inspire future activists. I reached out to numerous organizations, and I'm extremely thankful to the following individuals who actually responded to my different emails and messages. And so for my story, my sources were Melissa Jones, who's the Director of Marketing at the Women's Museum of California, Ellen Snortland, who's a board member of the National Women's History Alliance, Allison Munder, who's the Chapter Development Associate of Girls Learn International, and Melissa Herrera, who is the host and the creator of the Mimosa Sisterhood podcast. And so in addition to the sources that I had for this story and that who drove the piece, I also interviewed experts to supplement the experiences of the sources with their own research and observations. And so for my story, I was able to find experts in the end, and they included Dr. Nina Gilbart and Dr. Rebecca Jo Plant, both of whom are experts in women's history, Dr. Sophia Chicas Bradley, who's an expert in the impact of social media on body image issues, and then also Dr. Janet Tomiyama, who's an expert on weight stigma, dieting, and eating behaviors. And while my initial plan was actually to travel for my project, because of my health concerns with the pandemic, I actually didn't feel comfortable reporting in person. I have asthma and I've actually gotten pneumonia twice in my life so far, so I was extremely concerned about how getting COVID-19 would impact me and my family. And so because of this, my interviews were actually conducted over Zoom. Although I would say in future reporting projects, I would very much prefer to actually travel because it is, I think, very much a different experience. For this project, though, I asked questions about the benefits and the drawbacks of using social media for the feminist movement, and I ultimately tried to compile the answers provided by all of the sources into a single narrative, which did prove to be challenging at times because you're taking these 4 different sources from different places, 4 different experts, and you're trying to synthesize all of their answers into this single seamless narrative that tells a similar story. And so that was challenging, but it was certainly fulfilling as well. To attempt to capture the complexity of this issue, my article is broken down into 2 subsections, the first of which covers the positives and the second of which covers the negatives. The article is further broken down into subcategories, detailing specific positives and negatives as told by the characters and experts as well. And so after I finished the reporting, so the interview process, my article was reviewed, feedback was given, I made multiple edits and revisions, and before I knew it, my piece was published on the Pulitzer Center site where it actually now resides. And so I'm so grateful to have had Kim, Libby, Dr. Cohen, Professor Stonis, and my Pulitzer Center mentor, Rebecca Plevin, who guided me through the challenges I faced with attempting to report on such a sensitive and large topic, and also for their valuable feedback on my work that really helps make it what it is today. Even though there were numerous hurdles and challenges along the way, I'm incredibly thankful for this experience because it really taught me about how even when things don't really go as planned, you can still have a product that's immensely meaningful to you. And that really takes you in a direction that you didn't expect, but ends up being a lot more interesting than you had initially planned as well. And so I had an original plan that didn't work out, but I'm really actually happy that it didn't because I was able to cover a greater variety of positives and negatives that extend beyond a single movement and that actually move into the realm of what it means to be human and what it means to connect to each other. In addition to my main story, I also wrote field notes, and my field notes were a reflection on my experience reporting on this issue and what I'd learned. And the main theme of my field notes were the connection between the virtual and the real world, as you can kind of see from the title of my field notes. And actually, I had the opportunity to travel to the Women's Museum of California in San Diego to take photos of one of their craftivism classes. This was at a later point in the pandemic when I was starting to feel a little bit more comfortable, although still extremely cautious. And so now that I've discussed my reporting process, I'm going to delve a little bit into the experience of being in Washington, D.C. and experiencing Washington Weekend. And there were so many highlights from the weekend. It was really hard to narrow it down, but for the sake of time, I'm only going to focus on 3. And so while in DC, I had the opportunity to present my work to the other reporting fellows and the Pulitzer Center team, which was incredibly thrilling. Hearing all of the other fellows share their own findings and experiences was fascinating, and I learned so much from the experience of just even listening and watching the other fellows present. Also, presenting in a professional setting was a valuable learning experience that taught me a lot about what points to include in a presentation, the maturity involved in conveying one's findings, and also being prepared for questions after the presentation. The second aspect of the trip that I loved was traveling to various monuments and locations. And while in DC, we had this special dinner at the Cosmos Club, as well as a really fun scavenger hunt that took us to numerous famous locations in DC. And through this, I had the opportunity to bond with my fellow Global Health Panel members, as well as the other reporting fellows and the Pulitzer Center team as well. And this actually brings me to the third point of the trip, which is actually what I would consider to be the most memorable and valuable for me. And so throughout the entire weekend, I had such a wonderful time conversing with all of the other reporting fellows, whether it was hearing about their projects, answering questions about my own, or just simply talking about our experiences as students and human beings. It was just exhilarating to be talking to a group of such passionate, thoughtful, and inspirational individuals who truly care about making a difference in the world. And so this concludes my portion of the presentation. Thank you so much to the Pulitzer Center and to my 2 wonderful campus advisors for providing me the opportunity to speak with you all about my experience and for also giving me the opportunity to conduct this reporting project. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have for me today, or if you want to continue the conversation later on, I also put my email on the screen as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacqueline. I just want to say that Jacqueline was bold from day one. And I think sometimes you need to remember that you have to try. You may not get every single person you ask to interview you to say yes. And I usually have a rule that I've shared with my students where, you might ask 5 people for an interview and only 1 will say yes, but that's still a pretty good ratio of someone willing to sit down with you to give you your time. And you have to be bold, chance favors the bold. So I love that Jacqueline tried to interview people that, she thought might be out of reach, but why not try? What's the worst that could happen? By the way, there are classes at USC, my alma mater, where your grade is essentially to try to get someone's autograph who is famous. And so many students struggle with that assignment. It is not fair. So chance really does favor the bold. And, Jacqueline, I just want to thank you for being an incredible campus ambassador and a wonderful mentor to other students in the sense that you're sharing your experience and your amazing presentation. For the essence of time, I want to encourage people to share questions either through the chat, which I'm happy to moderate, or to unmute and raise your hands. And, definitely for students who are working on a Pulitzer Center proposal for their final project, this is an opportunity to hear from someone who's been through the process and someone who turned in work that was selected by myself, Professor Stonis, and the Pulitzer Center representatives who helped us to decide on who would be our first representative. So this is a good opportunity to hear from someone who essentially made it. You are competing for $3,000. And I just want to really emphasize that that is incredibly generous as a stipend for reporting, plus an all expense paid trip to Washington, D.C. to culminate all of that. And we are one of the few campuses, I think, where you have such hands-on instructors. Michelle Stonis and myself really enjoyed the process of working with Jacqueline and learning alongside with you. So please ask questions and don't be shy. This is your opportunity to participate. It's week 10 and you can tell.
I think I might have a question.
Armand, thank you for being bold.
It's kind of it may be like slightly personal. If Jacqueline's okay with answering it, if not, that's perfectly fine. And it is that like how did she propose to use the money, you know, that she was offered? Like if she was okay with answering, like, you know, I'm just curious, like how she, like, you know, like broke it down for the in the proposal, how she was going to use it.
Absolutely. So if I recall correctly, it's been a little while since I wrote this proposal, but if I recall correctly, initially because I had really wanted to interview Gloria Steinem for this piece because I thought she would provide an interesting perspective. As someone who's been a feminist for such a long time, she could provide the perspective of what it was like in the past, what it's like now, and maybe even some projections for what it could be like in the future. So I thought she would be a really great person to interview for this story. And so a big chunk of my proposal was actually dedicated to trying to be able to get an interview with her. Initially, my plan was actually to travel to New York, where she currently is. And so that's where a really big sum of the $3,000 was going to go, because I had really wanted to interview. I thought she would just be such a central aspect of the piece. It didn't really work out that way. But as I said during the presentation, that was still okay because it ended up giving me a different direction that I could have never anticipated and that I still very much loved. So that was one aspect of my proposal. Another aspect was I had also initially planned to try to find some sort of feminist conference that I could attend to learn more about feminism, and that would help inform the writing that I would do for the piece. So that was another component. And then I think there was one more part, if I recall correctly. I think the third section was for the interviews that I was going to be conducting with different professors from other universities. I was going to try to also be able to provide lunch for them during those interviews so that they could feel comfortable, have something to eat at the same time as I'm interviewing them. And so that was where the third part of the money was going to go. But the biggest portions, I think, was really for hopefully traveling to New York, and then also was the second one that I had just said before that, the feminist conference. So those were the two main aspects that I was going to use the money for. I did actually end up though using at least a part of the money, and I'm hoping that I could do more reporting so that I could actually use the other part for further reporting on the story. But part of it actually went to the trip that I went on to the Women's Museum of California. So that helped me actually pay for one of the craftivism classes, be able to drive there. And so that's what I used part of it for as well. Thank you for the question, though. That was wonderful.
Thank you for answering. That was really interesting to hear.
And for students that are working on proposals, we'll be looking at a sample proposal, which is available currently on Canvas, and you can take a look at and explore at your leisure a little bit more. But we'll be looking at how to create a budget and to propose costs. And you should think about everything from parking at UCLA or USC or in the city to food costs, right? And, you know, lunch is not inexpensive. So you want to think about every little detail that could come up. We understand, I think Libby can speak more to this, that this is a proposal and this may not be exact. And as Jacqueline said, she ended up going in a different direction, and that's okay.
Definitely. I always like to emphasize to people that with the budget, we just want to make sure that you have a general idea of, you know, can I pull off this project with this amount of money? Just to avoid something where if we run into a project that, let's say they kind of realize, oh, I need $10,000. We might not be able to go with you, you know, because we can only give you that 3,000. So yeah, flight costs are something to think about. If you have to stay in a hotel, an Airbnb, accommodation costs, food, never forget food. If you need the help of a translator or a local reporting partner, think about that as well. But yes, definitely doesn't need to be exact. And especially with things like flights or hotel costs, which are always fluctuating, we know that there's no way to give us a truly 100% accurate number. So estimates or ranges are totally fine.
Any other questions? This is your time. It's been set aside for you. And we have two experts in their own right here. Libby, I have a question. I've been very interested in seeing the developments in Iran. You know, I've grown up with many Persian people. I have a lot of friends who have family back in Iran. How does the Pulitzer Center feel about reporting in areas that are high conflict zones or where it's very hard to assure security and the safety of reporters? Are there places that are off limits that students should know about, since we do have such a large Persian student body at GCC?
Yeah, that's a great question. And a lot of times it's a case by case basis. There are some times where Pulitzer Center has specific lines that we draw, or there are times when our campus partners, their administrations have specific lines in the sand that they draw and say, these are the places you cannot go to. With some place where it is a really high conflict zone, there is danger going on. Most of the time, I would say 99% of the time, we probably won't be able to send a student there if we're not able to guarantee your safety. We do have students who have reported, so like I have one fellow this year is reporting on in relation to the war in Ukraine, but they did not go to Ukraine. They're reporting on Ukrainian refugees in Turkey. So they found a way to report on an aspect of that conflict, but from a place that was a little bit safer for them. We also have students who, they choose to look at that like a conflict or an area through the lens of a diaspora community that's maybe here in the United States. So that's another way to report on an issue that it might be a little too dangerous to go to the actual place, but your reporting can still relate to it in some way. And I always encourage students interested in applying to, if you have some place you think you might want to go, definitely check in with your campus advisors, kind of see what they think, and they can reach out to us if they need to, or Glendale might have their own kind of rules in place for where you can and can't go.
Thank you. And for students, think about what's feasible, right? You may not want to report somewhere where you don't have language acuity and it's hard to find a translator who's reliable. Your safety is always paramount and is something that the college is concerned with, as is the Pulitzer Center. Any other questions? Be brave, be bold.
I have a question for Jacqueline.
Awesome. Thank you, Brittany.
Okay, so were you able to, I guess, relate personally to your topic? And if so, did that help you in your reporting?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. So I would say I relate personally in the sense of it's a topic that was definitely very interesting to me. So as a psychology major, I've always been, my really area of interest within the realm of psychology actually lies in compassion. I like compassion research, altruism, morality. I like to understand how that works and what could potentially be impacting it. And so when I was doing that research paper for one of my classes, where I was trying to explore how self-esteem impacts, how social media impacts self-esteem and how that relationship actually could be negatively impacting whether people are more likely to act compassionately toward one another. That to me was really interesting. And then also I've always been interested in women's rights. That's something that has it's just something that has been developing throughout the many years. Both of my parents were social science majors, and so we talk a lot about these kinds of issues. And so feminism was something that was always very interesting to me. And so seeing that our Pulitzer Center focuses on gender issues, I kind of combine these two interests. So you have psychology, but you also have feminism and women's history. I kind of combined all of those things together. So it became a topic that was very personally interesting to me. With regard to the experiences of the characters and the sources and the experts themselves, many of the things that they were talking about were personal experiences that they've had and also things that they've observed. And so there's one section that talks about body image issues and the social comparisons that are made. And looking through social media, you can definitely kind of feel that sometimes, although not to the extent necessarily that someone else might be experiencing it, but you can still empathize with the experience. And so when we were talking about all of the different, I guess, aspects of social media, whether they were positive or negative, what they were seeing, it was interesting to me because I could kind of see what they were talking about too, just based on some of my own experiences on social media. As someone who's been kind of growing up seeing social media develop, it's just some of the more personal experiences were a little bit harder to relate to, but like you could still empathize. So I hope that answers the question, but thank you so much.
Yeah, it did. Thank you for that answer. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just shared in the chat that after giving birth, I think I was maybe 3 days postpartum, I started to get ads on Instagram for compression pants. And I didn't know what they were, and I had had a C-section. So I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll give these a whirl. Maybe they will help me feel better. They were horrible. They're like a medieval torture device, and I would never recommend them to any woman. They don't make you look better. They don't make you feel better, and they are as unnatural as they come. And I didn't search this. I was just the right age. My phone had figured out that I'd given birth, and it had targeted me in such a way. Women are targeted quite a bit. We know this. And so I think Jacqueline's research and interest is very relevant here. And there's really very little compassion associated with targeting women who give birth with these kinds of things that are not medically sound, or not medical devices, and don't make them feel better. And so very interesting topic. Does anyone have any questions specific to Libby about your proposals? You know, what might get someone's interest? I mean, think about your proposals and your areas of interest right now. Maybe this is an opportunity to share, or our faculty members that are here, that are present. Thank you for joining us, faculty and staff. Any questions that you might have with the last 7 minutes that we have together?
I kind of have a question about a proposal. I don't know if it's a bit of an obvious one or not. But basically, when we're writing the proposal, I'm sure obviously we have to have, you know, an idea about what topic we want to cover. But how thought out do we have to, like, does our topic have to be? Does it like do we have to know exactly what we want to write about, or like is it basically just the general idea? It's essential.
I would say, I guess, I don't know, Dr. Cohen, if in your class you turn in like multiple versions of the proposal, but I would say our hope is by the time your proposal is kind of before our eyes at Pulitzer Center, you'll want to be pretty specific. You'll want to have that idea, that story angle in mind. I kind of mentioned in my slides some things you want to think about, like the types of people you might want to interview for your story, or the types of data or research you might want to look at. There's also a spot on the application usually where you can kind of give us, you know, if I were to win this proposal, here's kind of a timeline or an itinerary I might want to follow in the field. And I would say the more specific you can be with your story idea, the better chance you're going to have in winning the fellowship. Because when we're reviewing applications, we really want to find one that we say, you know, not only is this a great story that we're really interested in, but we also have confidence that this person can pull it off and that they can have a really great learning experience, and get a great story, a great writing sample, and something to put on your resume out of the fellowship. But Jacqueline did bring up a good point in her presentation, which is that something that a lot of fellows say, which is a lot of times your story might change once you're in the field. So of course, turning in your proposal, we always know that it might change a little bit once your reporting starts, but when you do turn it in, you should try to have it as specific as you can be.
Thank you so much.
So Piper in the chat writes, thank you all so much. This has been a great presentation. I'm so impressed by Jacqueline's work and all the work that was done to establish the consortium. Thank you, Piper, for being here and for your support. You know, it means a lot to have faculty that are here, that are present. I wanted to add to Libby's point, which I thought was excellent. You don't only want to be specific in your final iteration of your proposal, but you really want to think about the characters. And that's why, you know, one of the things that I ask you to do is to think about 6 people that you would interview, 3 that are more characters and 3 that are more experts. And the reason for this is when you think about what people pick up and what they read, if they're able to see themselves in your writing, and maybe Professor Blaker could talk about this a little bit, but if they can visualize themselves in your writing in your report, they're more interested in reading it. So the event that Professor Stone has held, I believe it was last week, my sense of time is distorted during week 10 of the semester, but Dina Gotchman, who is the writer of this piece for Teen Vogue, she used a young woman who is 19 and who had had an abortion, and they retraced her steps for why she made the decision, how she made the decision, and it told this larger narrative about reproductive rights, but through the lens of a 19-year-old woman who could be any 19, 20-year-old woman living in the United States who's affected by poverty, who doesn't have any support, doesn't have a partner who's going to support her, and the decision that she has to make to terminate a pregnancy. And so think about characters that can really help to make your pieces better. Because when I think about what I read, I want to be able to connect. If I don't connect well with, you know, the author, I'm going to put that piece down and move on to something else. But perhaps our English instructors have more to share because you know a lot about narrative-driven articles, pieces, and work.
Absolutely, what you say is 100% right. We read literature and journalism because we want to connect with people. We want to understand how people are living their lives, maybe from a different perspective than ours, and that's what you can give to us by bringing us your stories. I wanted to say that I noticed on the meeting here, I see more than one of my former students, and I want to encourage all students, anybody who's interested in this fellowship, which is so amazing, to reach out to other faculty that you know. If you've been in my class before and you want some feedback about your proposal and you want someone to give it an objective perspective, please know that your professors here would be super happy to do that and to do anything that we could do to support this program. I'm thrilled that this program exists at GCC. So thank you for that very much.
That is awesome. I mean, if you have professors who are not me, not Professor Stonis, and are willing to look at your work, it just makes it that much better. You want as many eyeballs as possible looking over your work, giving you advice, thinking about something that I didn't think about, I'm going to forget. So, you know, you want someone else to look at your work and think about things through a different lens, and it will be immensely helpful. And with that, I just want to thank Libby for being here, Jacqueline for being here. You both have been so terrific, and we will make this recording available to anyone who wishes to see it and put it on our website. So thank you all for your time today. I know it's week 10, it's midterms and post midterms for some of us, but we're almost there. It's almost Thanksgiving.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Good luck on your midterms and on your proposals. I'm really looking forward to reading them. And thank you, Jacqueline, for your awesome slideshow.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been so wonderful to be here with all of you, and good luck on your proposals.